Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of BRob Inspired, where we have ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I could not be more excited to have Mr. Damon West on our show today. Let me give you a little bit of a backdrop. So we took a family vacation. We're out in Denver, Colorado. And I'm out for a little bit of a run, enjoying the scenery. And I always like to listen to a podcast. Ed Milet's one of my favorite. And I'm listening to Ed. And he has this guest on named Damon. And I'm listening to Damon's story, and I'm telling you, I was totally engulfed. I could have probably run a marathon that night listening to you and Ed on that show and your story and the passion and compassion of what's happened to you in your life and how you've transformed that and you've taken what's happened to you and been so positive with it. And I think where we're at today, there's a lot of negativity and a lot of stuff coming at you that's going to knock you off your horse. And what you've done with your life, my friend, blew me away. And I told my wife when I got back from my run, I said, listen, you've got to listen to this. So I took excerpts from that episode, and she was blown away. I said, I'm going to meet this guy someday. And lo and behold, you're here in St. Louis, Missouri with me. A good friend of ours, Ben Newman, made the connection. Very grateful for you, Ben, for hooking us up. Enjoyed our time together last night.
Yeah.
And brother, I couldn't be more excited to have you on the show today, so welcome.
No, brother, I appreciate it, man. And look, if you get to be called BRob, I want to be called D West.
Done.
That's what guys called me when I played ball in college. Okay. That's what guys called me in prison, D West. Or some of them called me Mayor West. Everybody gets a nickname in prison, but you don't get to pick your nickname. But listen, no, I'm very grateful. Last night was incredible. I don't get a lot of chance to go in and spend time like that inside the culture of the groups I talk to. I'm speaking to companies all over the world now. And look, Ed's podcast was incredible, man. Yeah. I mean, it launched me into a different stratosphere. One of the things I can tell people about Ed all the time is that Ed is a very good listener. And that makes for a very good interviewer. And you too, Brian, you're a very good listener. But what I really like about what I saw last night from your people is the model of servant leadership that is like a core value with what you're doing here. And man, it's just, I'm thrilled to be here. I grew last night as a result of it. So thank you, brother.
Oh, I appreciate it. I think, life's short, and that's certainly a part of your story. I want to get into that because I want our listeners and the people watching to understand the adversity that you've been through in your life, the decisions that you've made, and where that's led you to today. Take us back to the beginning. So now, let's start now. You're a professor. You're an author. You're a very accomplished speaker. You get to travel. You get to do all these things, spend time with groups like ours and, professional athletes, college athletes. But that's not the way it always was, right? You're a former D1 football player. Why don't you take us back to that time and then the tragedy of what happened in your life and how it's kind of evolved and led you to where you are today?
Great place to start. And like, as we were talking a while ago, so we're sitting here right outside of St. Louis right now, recording this. And the first game I ever played, I was a quarterback at University of North Texas. First college game I ever played was against University of Missouri back in 1995.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was, they threw me into the fourth quarter. We were losing, so it's kind of like mop-up duty. But the very first pass I ever threw was right there in Columbia, Missouri. So the next season, though, it was the year of 1996, September 21st, 96 to be exact. We're playing against Texas A&M, and I'm a starter at this point. I'm 20 years old. Life is in front of me. All my dreams are wrapped up, and my identity's wrapped up in being a college football player, but I got hurt against A&M. Go down, career and an injury. Never play college football again. And I get up to this fork in the road in life, Brian, and life is about these days that I call fork in the roads. There's a handful of them in life that you're going to make a big pivotal decision because the adversity hit. You make the right choice and go the right way, the wrong choice and go the wrong direction. Well, when college football was over for me prematurely, I made a lot of wrong choices. It was around drugs. Mm-hmm. So I got into cocaine, ecstasy pills. But I was a functional addict. I graduated college in 1999. I moved off to Washington, worked in the United States Congress, worked for a guy running for president. Then in 2004, I moved back to Dallas to train to be a stockbroker for one of the biggest banks in the world, UBS. So I was training to be a broker at UBS. And it was at that job in 2004 that another broker introduced me to meth one day.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sleeping at work, man. And the guy's like, dude, you can't sleep on a job like this. They're going to fire you. So he said, come on out of the parking garage. I got something that'll pick you up. So we slip out to the parking garage. And that day I smoked meth for the first time. And it was instantly hooked, just like that, like touching a live wire. And 18 months later, I've lost everything. I've not lost. I gave everything away. Because that's what addicts do. We give things away. Addicts give up their goals to meet their behaviors. Driven people, successful people, They give up behaviors to meet goals, but
Wow.
not an addict, So now I'm homeless, living on the streets of Dallas, and I become a criminal to fund my addiction. It's petty crimes at first, breaking into cars, breaking into storage units. Then I start breaking into people's houses, and this is a very serious crime. Now, in my crime spree, they called it the Uptown Burglary Crime Spree because it was in the Uptown neighborhood of Dallas where it all started. I never physically hurt anybody, so no one was ever home. My victims never saw me. I never saw them. No weapons were used, but I hurt people in such a different way, though, Brian, because when I broke into people's homes, I didn't just steal their property. I stole their sense of security. Mm-hmm. I have a family today. In my home is my wife, my little stepdaughter that's 11 years old, and my mother. Now that my dad passed away, lives with us. I can't imagine somebody going into my home and doing what I did to so many of my other victims. And these burglaries would go on for 3 years. I had a whole burglary crew.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, young and old, men and women, black and white, all these different people that are in the meth world because addiction doesn't discriminate. Addiction doesn't care who you are, where you come from, So we're just a bunch of meth addicts breaking into houses. And but on July 30th, 2008, the Dallas SWAT team stormed into this apartment that I was in, and they took me down that day. They arrested me. They took me to Dallas County Jail. My bond was set at $1.4 million, which was essentially a no bond to keep me in jail until the trial.
Wow.
And I went to the trial 10 months later, and a jury sentenced me to life in prison, 65 years.
For
nonviolent property crimes. These are, like I said, no one was ever home. Look, man, I understand the jury doing it. And like one of the things you described me as is in this life is a professor. So I went back to school and got a master's in criminal justice after I got out of prison, and I became a professor at the University of Houston, teaching a class called Prisons in America, which is ironic because I'm like the only professor on earth to teach a prisons class who lived in prison, right? But I know that juries in America, the jury system, they punish people for two reasons. One is that they're afraid of a person, which is understandable. The other one is that they're mad at somebody. And when a jury's mad at somebody, the punishment can exceed the punishment that would normally be given to someone they're afraid of. Wow. I was locked up in prison with guys that killed people, guys that molested children that had less time than what I had.
How old were you when this happened?
32 when I got arrested, 33 when I was sentenced to life in prison.
So 33 years old, gavel comes down, Damon West, 65 years.
You're sentenced to 65 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
What on earth went through your mind?
Dude, what went through my mind...
Were you sober at this time?
Sober. I was sober.
Because you were in the jail.
But here's the thing. It's a good question. I'm sober, but I'm not in recovery. Big difference when you're talking about addiction. Because when you're in recovery, you're actively working a program of recovery to keep you from going back out into your addiction. Sober is just like, hey, man, I'm in Dallas County Jail, and I don't have access to drugs. So I was trying to get the drugs into jail.
Wow.
But I never got them in. I never could find anybody to bring me some meth in because coming down off of meth was so hard, and I was such an addict. That's what I wanted. But that day on May 18, 2009, it was like getting kicked in the stomach. It was hitting rock bottom, and I knew that day the thought went through my head, something's got to change, Damon, and that something is you. But I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't have the tools to do it at that time. And my mom and my dad got to visit with me right after the trial, and my mom gives me this insane ultimatum that I think at the time. She tells me I can't get into any gangs, I can't get any tattoos. She's telling me no gangs, no tattoos. Come back as the man we raised, or don't come back to us at all. And this is an existential threat because, like, my mom and my dad are pretty much all I have. You want to find out how few friends you have, how few people you're connected to in the world? Go mess up really big. Yeah. Make some big mistakes. Get sentenced to life in prison. You'll find out how few people are really in your corner.
So the only people in your corner
give you an ultimatum. The only people in my corner are giving me this ultimatum, and I know I got to get it done, but I don't know how. And, that night after my trial, I go back to my pod in Dallas County Jail. And you can't cry inside of a jail facility. Yeah. You can't. That's weakness. There's predators everywhere. The only place you can really cry is in the shower. And so I get back to my pod. It's been a long day. I just got sentenced to life in prison. Walk into my pod, and it's a very high-profile case. I mean, everybody's watching the news every day. So every man in there knows I got sentenced to life in prison when I walk back in the pod. And, I mean, every head turns to me. Everybody's quiet. No one will come near me. It's like they're afraid they're going to catch a life sentence if they get too close and touch me.
Gosh.
Like I'm a leper. And I can feel, you just imagine a world where you're walking into where all this tension's around and every set of eyeballs is on you, right? So just stone-faced as I could, I go to my bunk, I grab my shower stuff, and I go to the shower, and I start crying, man. I start bawling. And I'm begging Christ, man, take me back, man. Please, I need help. And that's the thing. I'm asking for help now. That's how I know that I was at bottom, because I was able to ask for help. The 3 words that are so hard for people to say, I need help, they were coming out of my mouth, and it was coming in the form of me asking God, take me back, man. I need help. And that's the thing about Christ, man. He just says, hey, man, get on my back. I got this, brother. Let's go. And that was the day I turned my life back over to Christ. So ironically, it's the day that I lost my life because the jury took it. But I gained that new life, right? That one of eternal life. And started living in the solution. And instead of living in the problem, I was living in the solution. And I run into this guy in Dallas County Jail, this old black man named Muhammad. And this old Muslim guy. And he shared with me this story, this allegory, if you will, of how I could do this, how I could come back as the man my parents raised me to be, despite the fact that the odds were so much against me with all the gangs. He's telling me about the gangs. It's all about race. You're going to fight the white gangs first. Then you're going to fight the black gangs. But he tells me things like, you don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights, which was a valuable lesson, not just in prison, but in life.
It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. But he shared with me, he said, here's how you're going to do it. He said, he told me to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. He said, you have 3 choices in this pot of boiling water of what you're going to become. You can be like the carrot that turns soft and mushy and weak in the boiling water. The egg, which turns hard, mad, and mean in the boiling water. A carrot goes in real hard, but it gets softened by the water. The egg goes in with a soft core, but gets hardened by the water. But he told me you could also choose to be like the coffee bean which changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. And he said the coffee bean was the only thing that could change the water because it's the change agent. The coffee bean changed the entire atmosphere around it because the power was inside it. And the last words he ever said to me when the prison bus is coming to pick me up, be a coffee bean. These 4 words. And I remember where I was, BRob. I remember in my mind where I was when he tells me this, because it crystallized it for me. Like, okay, I've got 3 choices and the choice is mine. It really is mine. That was empowering. And that's when we empower other people, we teach them how to think a better way. And thinking is everything. He retrained me to think in a different way, to think that I could do it. And this is one of the things I'm going to tell, your company when I talk to them today, that growth follows belief. But you have to believe in yourself before other people are going to believe in you. In fact, I think we all know
true.
It's the people closest to us usually when we have these dreams that we dare say out loud that they're dream crushers, right? Oh, that's never going to happen. You'll never be able to do that. Why would you think about something like that? Just do what everybody else has been doing, But these audacious dreams that we have to believe in them wholeheartedly before other people believe in that. And man, I can tell you, I took the coffee bean message to the biggest pot of boiling water there is, a maximum security prison in the state of Texas. And it was hard. It was the most dangerous and scary thing I've ever been through in my life.
I can't even imagine. So you're walking into this place. You just got a textbook example of, hey, this is what's going to happen to you. Obviously, you've never been in prison before. What was that like walking in? And the things that he shared with you, did they come to fruition? Was that you were approached by gangs? How did that all play out?
He told me, he said, you're going to be approached first. When the day you walk into prison, because I had to go live at the life sentence building of a maximum security prison. And because I'm a lifer, I got to go to the worst part of prison. He said, listen, man, a white guy is going to approach you first because you're white. This is the racial dynamic of prison, he's telling me. And he said the inmates want it to be about race. This isn't like an institutional thing where it's mandated from the state. The inmates want this. Everybody breaks up in their own racial group. Prison, BRob, is a microcosm of what society would look like if you took all the guardrails off and you just told everybody, go just do what you want to do, be who you want to be around with. There's no laws anymore to govern anything. Human beings are tribal, and we've always been tribal. And if the guardrails were taken off society again, I believe that in a world where there's no rules, humans would become tribal again too. And then because I lived in a world where there's no guardrails, that was prison. But he told me you're going to be approached first by a white guy. First guy's not a threat to you. He's an information gatherer. He's a scout. He's going to ask you one relevant question in that first conversation. What gang do you want to be a part of? And he's like, man, get him out of your face as fast as you can and get ready, because the second guy comes up, he's not coming to talk to you. He's coming to hurt you. He's an enforcer. This guy is going to come try to hurt you. He said, when the second guy comes up, put your fist in his mouth. He said, don't even let him say a word. Get the jump on the first fight. Yeah, and that's what. And I walk into prison, man. I walk into the Marks Dodge. The Marks Dodge unit's got 3,000 men on this unit. But the life sentence building where I live is on 7 building. 7 building's got 432 men. Everybody's got life. It's an island they take you to. And you can't come off the island for 5 years. They just want you to get escaping off your mind. So they lock you down on this island. There's razor wire fences everywhere. And I walk in that first day to G-Pod, which is where I'm going to live, on G-Pod on 7 building. And within 5 minutes, little white guy comes up, just
Here
like
he
Jackson's
comes.
do. Yeah, here he comes, man. He's tatted up from head to toe. Even his eyelids are tatted up. You know, he gets in my face. He's like, "Hey, white boy, what family are you riding with?" Now, they call gangs families, Brian, and a gang is not a family. Families are different than gangs. But so I told him, I said, "Man, get out of my face, guy." I said, "I'm riding with God. Please just leave me alone. I'm riding with God." He laughed at me, Brian. He said, "God isn't here. We kicked him out of here a long time ago. But we are here, and we're going to come get you, so you need to get ready." And he goes up the stairwell. A few minutes later, man, coming down the 3rd tier, it's a 3-tier level inside that prison. Coming down the 3rd tier is the biggest white dude I've ever seen, man. This dude's mad. He's like an ogre, like Shrek, man. He's coming down the stairwell. I get a good look at this dude head on, man. He's just massive, huge, muscles and veins ripping out of his shirt. He's got a bald head with a swastika all around the top of his skull.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like seeing this coming at me. It's like in a movie, man. It's like slow motion.
And it's not like you're a 6'6",
No,
230
man, I'm
pound
5'10"
guy.
and a half, 170. Well, actually, at that time, I was like 230 pounds because I was fat. I was set around Dallas County Jail eating honey buns and soups, coming off meth. I mean, I was eating again like I'd never eaten before, fat, out of shape. And here he comes, this mountain of a person, man. But I did what Jackson said, man. And we got within range. I hit him in the mouth as hard. I mean, my feet came off the ground, hit this guy so hard. 20 seconds later, this fight is over because this dude beats me from one side of the day room to the other. My hit didn't even face him, man. He laughed at it and then beat me from one side of the day room to the other. And that was my first fight in prison. That's day 1 inside of 20 minutes, man.
Welcome to life.
To prison, man.
The
And this
G-Pod.
is G-Pod. And for the next 2 months, that's what prison looked like, man. I probably got in 3 dozen fights, and I physically lost 75% of those fights. BRob, I got my butt kicked all over that prison. But I won all of those fights because I showed up to fight.
You fought him.
That was what Jackson told me. You don't have to win those fights. You just got to fight those fights. And that's what I did. I just kept showing up. And it took about 2 months before the violence was finally over and the threat to my physical safety was gone. But then I started transforming the way I believed. I started thinking of prison as an opportunity. I had to stop looking at prison as a punishment and start looking at prison as an opportunity. This is the part of life I call perspective. You know, you have perspective in life and what a bad day looks like. We get so wrapped up sometime in our days. We think that, oh man, this is going to be an awful day. This is terrible. And, you know, and we were hearing from one of your producers, man. He had a tough morning this morning. You know, his house got TP'd, his daughter's car had some flour on it. That's a bad day, but is it really as bad as it could be, right? And that's what I had to like apply that perspective in life, because in my life, every day that I wake up and my feet don't hit the cold concrete floor of the prison cell, I want to win. I'm gonna have a good day. I'm gonna find a way to have a good day, because when we can apply that perspective and say, you know what, this is not a good day, but it's not like a day when a marriage failed, a job was lost, a bankruptcy, someone dies, a kid gets hurt. Those are the bad days, man. Most of our days aren't bad days, so they're just not so good days sometimes. But I had to retrain the way I thought, and that was part of what becoming a coffee bean was all about.
So during that time, you served 7 years, correct?
7 years, 3 months, and 18 days, but no one's really counting.
So I know a lot of listeners like myself are thinking, well, wait, I thought it was a 65-year sentence. Damon's sitting in St. Louis right now talking to Brian. What happened? 7 years, you get out. What happened?
Yeah, so in Texas, they have 2 different classifications of crimes. One crime is aggravated, one crime is non-aggravated. Aggravated crimes are physical victim crimes, violent criminals. Non-aggravated crimes are crimes where there's no physical victim, but you have a criminal. You think about, you know, a theft, think about stealing a vehicle, think about drug charges. Those are non-violent crimes. So is burglary when no one's home. So my crimes, because they're non-violent, I was eligible to make parole on a lot faster track than someone that has a violent crime. In fact, someone with a violent crime would have to do 30 years of a life sentence, 30 calendar years before they even see a parole officer.
30 years.
30 years, man.
Before a glimpse of hope.
Before a glimpse of hope. And that's the thing. You hit it right on the head. Hope is the main thing that people have to have. The running joke inside of the life sentence building, guys would joke around and say, man, my parole officer's parents haven't even met yet.
Wow.
You know, think about that. My parole officer that I'm going to get one day when I get out, parents haven't even met yet. That's your reality, man.
Wow.
Your parole officer hasn't even a concept yet.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So, but I mean,
how'd you remain positive then? I know you said you gave your life to God. Is that the genesis of what carried you through that 7 years? Once you got through the physical violence, what happened after that started to change your perspective?
Yeah, and that's a good question because, prison as a physical concept is only one form of prison. There's a lot of different ways to be locked up, Ryan. And I would argue that a physical prison is one of the less restrictive ways to be locked up in life. Yeah, because the spiritual and mental prisons that you see so many people in, that's a tough prison to walk out of. It's very tough because once you become a prisoner in your mind, boy, that's the hardest prison to get out of. I meet more people out here in the free world that are locked up than I ever did when I served time in a real prison.
Amazing to hear.
It's wild because more people are in prison by their thoughts and by their things, these cell phones, their prejudices, stuff like that you get locked into. More people are locked up by their thoughts and things than by steel bars and barbed wire and concrete. And so the prison of your mind, when I finally walked out of prison in 2015, I made parole. When I walked out of prison in 2015, I describe it as the trifecta of freedom. Because long before I walked out of a prison, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, I'd already freed myself. I was a free man. I just didn't have the physical ability to be free, but I was free in the most pure sense because I found a way inside that prison to find joy in my life and every day and find purpose because I trusted that in this thing called faith that I'm right where I'm supposed to be and that I've got a job to do while I'm here. And I tried to instill that in some of the other guys. I still do that with inmates that are locked up. Guys and men and women that don't have any hope because they don't see their parole date, or maybe they have life without parole. But I try to encourage them to understand that you're here for a reason. Maybe you're here to connect with some other inmate that's going to get out one day. You're going to change their mindset, and they're going to go out there and they're going to change their family tree, the way they think. Their kids don't have to go down this road of generational incarceration because you impacted that inmate while they were in prison. Maybe that's your purpose.
Yep.
So I tried to find my purpose and live in my purpose every day inside that prison. And I found that the secret to life is servant leadership. You talk about it, I talk about it. It's the key to everything in life because servant leadership, that's when we get outside of ourselves. We become a servant. We help other people. We help others reach their goals in life, and we set the example for other people. And people want to follow servant leaders, Even in a maximum security prison where things like vulnerability are considered a weakness, but vulnerability is really a strength, And that was one of the things I had to instill in in my mind that, hey, I can be vulnerable to a point in this place and probably draw people in closer to me, and it worked. It worked. I mean, people followed me in there. When I joked around full circle for my nickname that I got in prison, the mayor. Everybody gets a nickname in prison. You don't always get to pick your nickname. Most people don't pick their nicknames. Some of them come from the streets, but I didn't grow up in the streets, man. I came from a different background than most of the people I was locked up with, and that was one of the things that had a lot of tension in my life in the very beginning. I don't look like the other men that I'm around. In fact, I look like the man. The man put them there.
Yeah.
And now the man was serving time with them, and everybody wanted a shot at the man.
Yeah.
But once I established myself and I showed that I would defend myself and I fought back and I earned the right to exist, I got to mingle with all the people of all the different races and all the different groups in there. In prison on the life sentence building where I live, you couldn't sit down at a table and eat a meal with someone of a different race. Just not allowed. You can't do it. Yeah, it's just, you can't do that. But I could because I'd earned that right. So I would sit down at tables with blacks, Hispanics, whites, whatever. But I earned the nickname that I'm so fond of too was the mayor. I became the mayor of Styles. And people call me the mayor because the guy that gave me the nickname, he said, man, every time you walk around this unit, everybody wants to come up and shake your hand. Inmates and guards and everybody, they're all wanting to talk to you. And it's like you're just meeting all your constituents everywhere you go. And so I was the mayor of Styles. But people wanted to follow that. I was a light in a dark place. I was Andy Dufresne inside of a prison. Andy Dufresne from Shawshank. Because Andy's role in that movie, Andy brought hope to a place that was hopeless. The movie Shawshank Redemption isn't even a movie about Andy. It's a movie about Red. It's about Morgan Freeman's character because Red's a dead man. It's the story about how Red, who was dead, came back to life again because this guy named Andy Dufresne brought this thing in there called hope. Remember Red warned Andy inside that prison, man, hope is a dangerous thing. Red was dead. But by the end of that movie, Red said hope is a good thing because Andy told Red, get busy living or get busy dying. And I think that that transfers in life. When you're a servant leader, you're showing people how it's done, and you go out there and do it yourself. Mark, when he picks me up yesterday from the airport. I love hearing people's stories, because I think when I get into a car, a lot of times people are going to, they know a little bit about me, and they want to hear stories from me. But I turn it around. I'm like, hey, tell me your story, So I'm hearing Mark's story. He used to do the classic car thing and all that, but he was telling me about you. And that's when I found out you were his son-in-law. And he was talking about servant leadership. And he told me the other day, he said, I said, give me an example of BRob with servant leadership. He said, man, the other day, somebody's lunch was at the desk. Mark said he shuffles around, works different jobs, and here he's at the front desk that day, right? Lunch was downstairs. And you said, hey, give me that. I'll take it upstairs to who it belonged to. And Mark's like, oh, you don't have to do that. You're the boss. He's like, give me the lunch. I'll take the lunch up there. So you took the lunch up there and delivered your lunch to one of your employees. That's servant leadership, dude. That was really cool. I loved hearing that story, man. It told me a lot what I need to know about you.
Well, I think I was so drawn to you and your story because things of servant leadership show up, having hope. You talk about being in a dark place and being a beacon of light for other individuals. I'm so proud of you of what you've done beyond the prison walls. Why don't you talk to us about your life now? You're married. You have a stepdaughter. You're a professor. I'm a huge sports fanatic. You've spoken and speak to some of the best teams in college football, all over the place. How have you done that, and how have you adjusted life outside of prison?
So there's a pivotal day in my life when I got out of prison November 16th, 2015. I did 7 years, 3 months, 18 days. My parents are there waiting to pick me up, and they bring me back to Southeast Texas to live with them. And I would say live with them because for the first 2 years I'm out of prison, I live in my parents' spare bedroom. Let me paint the picture for you, Rob, for your listeners. I'm 40 years old. I just got out of prison. I'm on parole for the rest of my life. I got a job, and I'm making just above minimum wage. And I love my job, man, because that job's not a prison job, right? I live in my parents' spare bedroom. And it's like, which way are you ladies going to swipe on that guy on Tinder, right? If I would have had a Tinder profile, it would have sucked. But I didn't. I wasn't on a dating app. I wasn't brave enough to be on a dating app, first of all, man. Yeah. But actually, ironically, I met my wife during that period when I lived with my parents. My wife now, Kendall, she was my girlfriend at the time. She literally had to walk through my parents' living room and say hi to them to go see me in my parents' spare bedroom where I lived. Wow. And this was like, she fell in love with that guy. And that guy, back in 2017, I was working at the law firm that day. I had a job at a law firm. And a buddy of mine in Houston called me up, and he said, hey, man, you got to get down here to Houston, 90 miles away. You got to get down here to Houston. The Bear Bryant Coach of the Year Award is tonight. The 8 best coaches in the country are in this room. He knows I want to talk to college football teams. So he's like, the 8 best coaches are here. I'll sneak you in. I got a press pass. He works with media. So I'm like, man.
Fantastic.
I got to go. So I drive the 90 miles from Beaumont to Houston. I'm practicing my elevator pitch of what I would say to these coaches. And, man, look, this is inside that window of the first 2 years I'm out of prison, man. There's not a lot of places for me to speak when I get out of prison.
And that was your passion. You wanted to speak.
I wanted to speak.
Share your message.
Was share my message. And I would practice my presentation every night in my parents' spare bedroom. They had a mirror in there. And it just happened to be in there when I moved in. So every night for 2 years, I practiced my presentation. Got in my reps, man, because I don't have audiences really, but I got to have practice. And so I would just practice alone in my bedroom, getting my reps in.
Love it.
And so now I'm going to meet these coaches that night on January 12th, 2017. And I'm going around this room, and all these coaches, USC, Wisconsin, Penn State, they're all there, man. And I'm shaking their guys' hands, and I'm telling these head coaches why they should bring me in to talk to their team. And every coach I met that night slammed the door in my face, Rob. They all told me no, flat out, just no.
Are you just running up to them? Hey, I'm Damon West.
Yeah. My elevator pitch is terrible, and I'm like talking so fast. But it's like, I've never been in this room. Here's my shot. In 1 hour, I've pissed through the entire room. I got 7 no's of the 8 coaches that are there in 1 hour. That's a no every 8 minutes.
Oh, my gosh.
Man, I'm in the corner of the Toyota Center, and I'm licking my wounds. I'm feeling sorry for myself, and the voice in my head is screaming at me, go home. Get out of here. You're an imposter. Yeah, that imposter syndrome. That's hit me right there, right? Because I don't belong in this room. But I'm going to tell you something I quit doing a long time ago, listening to myself. And I encourage people to not listen to themselves either. Because the voice in our heads can be fear talking to us. And you don't want to listen to fear, because fear's a liar. Fear makes you see things that aren't there. It makes you believe things that aren't real. So instead of listening to myself, I talk to myself. And that's what I'm doing that night in the corner of the Toyota. I'm pumping myself back up.
You got one more shot.
I got one more coach there. I'm not leaving until I talk to this guy. He's the hardest guy to get to the room. His team had just beat Alabama 2 nights before for the national championship. Everybody wants a piece of this man's time. But I remind myself, you survived prison, Damon. You survived something way worse than this. Now applying perspective.
Yeah.
This is not a bad day. This is not a good day, obviously, because I got 7 no's, but it's not those days, man, in prison. So, man, now I'm stalking Dabo Swinney around this room. And I look like a nut, man. Like, BRob, I'm all over the place. I'm hiding behind fake plants. I'm weaving in and out of tables. And I'm trying to jump in every conversation Dabo's in. He sees me, man. Security sees me. They're going to chuck me out of this place pretty soon. But I finally pounce on Dabo, and I give him my best stuff for about 60 seconds, and I come up for air. Like, I'm talking that fast. Dabo puts his hand up. He's like, man, you got a card on you? You know? And I gave him my card, and he grabbed it, and he takes off. And over his shoulder, he's like, I'll check you out. He's gone. Well, that's a no. But I felt great about that no, because that no represented me leaving it all on the field.
Yeah.
That's what we learn in sports.
It's all you can do.
It's what we learn in sales. Man, in sales, most people are in sales, they just don't know it. You know, you knock on every door, you make every call. You know, you don't go home till the work is done. And man, or Jackson said, you don't have to win all your fights. You got to fight all your fights. Went 0 for 8, slept like a baby, left it all on the field. 4 months later, though, I got an email from the director of football operations at Clemson. This guy named Mike Dooley. And Mike Dooley's email said, hey, Damon, Coach Swinney met you at a award show in Houston. He'd love to have you come talk to the team.
Come on.
Do you have August 1st open? Dude, Mike Dooley, I got every first open. I got nothing going on, man. There's nothing going on in my life this time. So August 1st, 2017, I go speak to the Clemson Tigers, the defending national champions of college football. Now, remember, I've been working on this presentation for 2 years in front of a mirror, man. I'm ready to roll.
You're ready.
Yeah, send me in the room. I'm ready, man.
Fire.
It's like you got to be ready for your shot. You know, you can't say I'll get ready when I know the shot's coming. What if you don't know? You get called into the game, man. You're down. You got to make this basket, right? I'm ready to go. So I go there. I speak to Clemson, defending national champions of college football. And after that presentation that night, Dabo Swinney is up in my face. And Dabo is a very high energy guy. If you ever watch it, he is as advertised, man. He's like, oh my God. He said, man, that's the most amazing story I've ever heard. I've never seen my players respond like that to a speaker's story.
Wow.
He said, have you been to Alabama yet? And I'm like, no, I've been to Clemson. I hadn't been anywhere. I was like, man, no, I haven't been anywhere. He said, well, I just text Nick Saban, man. We'll see what happens. The next day, Brian, I land in Houston for my trip to Clemson, turn my phone on, voicemail on a text message from the director of football operations at the University of Alabama. Dabo Swinney kicked open the biggest door to college football. And he didn't stop there. Man, my phone is buzzing now. Kirby Smart's calling, Lincoln Riley's calling. All these coaches are calling from all over these college football programs. Hey, Dabo, give me your number when you talking to my team.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so now I'm living my dream, right? I'm in there, but I have no clue how big my life is going to, how much impact my life is going to have, because I tell people this all the time: man plans and God laughs. Like, my plan was to be speaking in front of college football teams, and I thought that was it, man. I thought, man, here I am, I'm done.
Now we're writing books.
And this is what happens, man. The biggest moment happens 1 year after that presentation at Clemson. It was August of 2018.
Okay.
I was still working the law firm at the time, and my cell phone rings. And on the other end of my cell phone is a guy named John Gordon. Now, John
Amazing.
Gordon, one of the biggest motivational speakers and authors in America.
Amazing.
He's an energy bus guy.
Yeah.
I follow John. I'm like, John, man, I know who you are. How do you know who I am? He said, Dabo Swinney.
Come on.
He said, I just talked to Clemson's football team. Before I could leave, Dabo brings me in the office for 30 minutes. He's telling me your story, Damon. He said, Damon, the world needs this coffee bean message. Let's deliver it to the world. Let's write a book. We'll call it The Coffee Bean.
Wow.
On the other end of my phone is
goosebumps
one of the biggest authors in the world. He's had 14 best-selling books, 28 books written, and he wants to write his next book with me, man. And it launches me to a different stratosphere, because my life changed forever. But it all goes back to that one night in Houston, Texas, that January 12th, 2017, in that corner of the Toyota Center where there's no one around me. I'm a loser. I've been beat down 7 times that night. One more coach to go. The voice in my head had me walking out the door. Now, if I listened to the voice in my head that night and I walked out the door, we're not having this conversation.
And how many of us have got to that point where you've been kicked in the shorts 7 times?
Yeah.
How many people get right there and they stop?
Yeah.
And they don't go ask that one last person that changed the course of your entire life.
And that's the whole point. You got to always ask the question, man. The only question you know the answer to is the one you do not ask. That's a no every time.
No.
You get a no if you don't ask, but you might as well ask the question. You got a 50-50 shot at getting a yes, But so many people I see, and I'm not knocking on anybody because I think that I've been there too, you give up and you didn't realize how close you were.
Yeah.
I was that close to my dreams coming true. But if I walk out, I never would have known how close I was. Now I know, because I look back at the story. I'm like, wow, man, I stayed an extra hour that night. That extra hour changed not just my life, but the world. I mean, the book, The Coffee Bean, has been reprinted in almost every language in the world now. Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, French, Italian. They've got a book on their shelf called The Coffee Bean. But it goes back to that one night when I refused to walk out on my dream.
Yeah.
And I've asked Dabo since then, because Dabo and I have become really close friends. He's one of my best friends. He's such a great servant leader. I need to get you and Dabo in the same room, man.
Oh, I'd love it.
I can't imagine the energy
Love
there.
it.
Yeah, but I've asked Dabo before, like, what was it, man? Why did you agree to bring me in? Because obviously I was a wreck that night. I was a disaster. My elevator pitch was horrible. My hands were sweaty, and it's just, you shake a sweaty hand, and it's like, But I asked him, I said, man, what made you do it? He said, man, the belief you had in yourself, Damon. He said, I could see it in you, man. You were on fire. He said, I know what that's like. And, Dabo's story is a very big underdog story too, man. Dabo, he's got one of the best stories ever about how he got to be where he is. He said, man, the belief you had in yourself. You realize, when you believe in yourself like that, other people are going to see that, especially if somebody else has been in your position. That's what did it, man. Growth follows belief.
Growth follows belief. And I think the other thing I pick up just hearing you describe this is preparation. Like, how many of us get the shot and we're not ready?
Yeah.
And we haven't prepared. We haven't spent hours in front of the mirror, right? And I'm sure that builds your conviction and builds your belief system so that when the moons align and the opportunity strikes, you're ready. You could step in and give that speech and give that pitch and have it with fire and belief and a burn to where somebody else that you're pitching to recognizes that, and man, you won that opportunity. But the perseverance and not listening to the self-doubt and being like, no, I got one more.
Yeah.
I got one more rep. I got one more coach to talk to. And the fact that you stood in the ring, you had one more after getting beat up, and now look where you're at, man.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating to me.
You control
so proud
a lot
of you.
more by what you control 4 things in life. You control what you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. But if you will focus on those 4 things and stop trying to control things you have no control over, because that's just waste your time. And you can't get time back. But focusing on those 4 areas, you can change your life pretty fast. Your life can change over the course of like 6 or 7 months. You can totally transform who you were if you just focus on those 4 areas and get to work, put in the work.
Yeah.
Because here's the deal: no one can put in your work for you. No one's going to take action for you. No one's going to wake you up. No one's coming to save you. There's no cavalry coming for you. You're the cavalry.
Yeah.
You are the cavalry. And whenever COVID hit, was another one of those really like, this is like a real moment, because in March of 2020, when the world shuts down, the last presentation I do, bring it all the way back to Missouri here, the last presentation I did before COVID hit was Walmart. Finally got in front of the biggest employer in America. The presentation the day before that was the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now I'm doing the NBA, I'm doing Walmart, and I say bring it back to Missouri because my grandfather graduated Hickman High School with Sam Walton back in the 1930s. Yeah, so it's like
that's awesome.
Weird tie back to Missouri, right? But Walmart, I thought I had arrived, and I'm watching the stuff on the news, all this COVID stuff, but there's no way they're going to shut down the country, right? They did. And every email I got after that was a cancellation of a presentation that I had. I lost $250,000 in about 2 weeks, up in smoke. 48 emails later, up in smoke. My whole thing I've built is gone. And I'm mad. I'm becoming the egg. The pot of boiling water is hardening me, man. And my wife is a nurse practitioner, so she's going to work every day. She's an essential employee, so she's going to work every day at the hospital. And I'm stewing around in my own misery. It's like sitting around in like a dirty diaper. When you're like you're just in this poop. And it's like. But I get up one morning, I'm like, no more of this. No, man, I'm in prison again, and I don't have to live in prison. I got out of prison, I didn't wake up in a prison cell. I'm not putting myself in a mental prison cell. I got to do something positive. So I got with a friend of mine. She has a big Zoom platform before Zoom became a real big thing. And I said, hey, listen, I want to give my presentation away to whoever wants to. She's like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, well, no one's spending any money right now. Remember, everybody froze.
Shut down.
Shut down. But people need encouragement. People need help. And I feel like this is a pot of boiling water. This is the moment that people need this message. I've got to give it away. One of the axioms we live by, we have these quirky sayings in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah. One of them is you got to give it away to keep it. So I was like, I got to give it away right now. So she's like, all right, we'll do it. And she's not going to make any money. I'm not going to make any money. So I put the word out there on social media. She puts the word out to her platform, and man, people are signing up to have these presentations done during COVID.
They need
Zoom. Needed it, man. So now I've on my calendar every day, I've got 3 presentations or 4 presentations or 2 presentations, but I know people are waiting there for me. They're waiting to be inspired. And for the next 4 months, I do like 120 free Zoom calls on, I'm giving away everything I just built. But here's what happened after COVID let up. In August of 2020, we're starting to bring people back into offices. People are coming back to work, especially in some of the southern states where I live. And I started getting these messages in Twitter and Instagram, the instant messaging app. Hey, you spoke at a presentation I said on a Zoom call, and I think it was great. Will you come speak to my company, my group, my team, my organization needs to bring you in, and we're willing to pay you, man.
And stack.
And now I'm out there speaking, and 2020 ended up being the year that I just took it to another level.
It's amazing.
But I didn't sit back. I didn't sit back and say, man, this sucks.
Woe was me.
And I was getting in my reps again, Brian.
Yeah.
I was practicing my presentation. And when I got back in there and doing it, people are bringing me in and paying me. It's sharp. It's fluid. I never missed a beat because I practiced it and I got in my reps. There's a good analogy I went by, and I still tell people that the corporations about this. In the 1920s, there were 2 cereal companies in America. There was Post Cereal Company and there was Kellogg's Cereal Company. Really, it was just Post. Post had all the market share. Kellogg's was real small. They had no market share. But in October 1929, the stock market crashed, the Great Depression begins. And when this happens, Post, the big juggernaut, they quit doing all the things that made them great out of fear and doubt. They lived in fear, Brian. And remember, fear's a liar. They quit marketing, quit doing radio. They fired a lot of their people. They laid a lot of people off. They hoarded the little bit of money they had in fear because they were going to hold on to this. Kellogg's, the same event in time in history. They see what Post is doing. They didn't see fear. They saw opportunity. And they jumped on it. They took the little bit of money they had, they pushed it to the center of the table, bet all on themselves, right? More marketing, more radio, more advertisement, research and development. They invented a new cereal during this time called Rice Krispies. And by 1934, Kellogg's overtook Post as the biggest cereal company in America. And Kellogg's, you're a broker. They've never looked back. They're still the biggest cereal company in America. But that event in time in history, 2 different companies see an event 2 different ways. One saw fear, one saw the opportunity. And that's what I think prison was very good for me, and I try to transfer this onto every audience I go speak to. And I'm blessed. I get to go speak to audiences all over the world now. But I try to teach people how to, when the crisis hits, when the adversity hits, put blinders on to all the negative outcomes and find that one positive. Maybe there's just one positive. Maybe there's 2 or 3, but find one of them and focus on the positive. And if you focus on the positive, you'll go in that direction.
I think that is genius. So the same paradigm, the same set of events, 2 people view it very differently, 2 very different outcomes. We're faced with adversity all the time, probably hourly, right?
Yeah,
throughout
absolutely.
the day. But how you approach that, do you see the fear, which fear is a lie, or do you see an opportunity?
Right.
And are you prepared for that opportunity? I love that.
Ed Milet says that life doesn't happen to you, life happens for you.
I love that.
Everything in life, the good and the bad, it's happening for you to become the best version of you. But you have to go through the adversity to meet the man or woman you were always meant to be, to shake the hand of the man or woman you were always meant to become. And that's where the best version of us is, on the other side of the adversity. So when adversity hits, look for what's the opportunity here?
Yeah.
I got a chance to grow. Let's go.
And the most expensive thing is living with regret, right?
Yeah.
With that mentality, you won't face that. I got one more question for you. This has been amazing.
Yeah, it's been great. I've enjoyed it, man.
Every time I get in front of a high performer, or I get in front of somebody that has discipline and is doing big time things, a lot of our people that watch and listen in, what's the one thing you do in your daily routine to center you, keep you focused, start your day off right? What do you do? What does Damon do?
I've got a prayer that I've been praying, and I got into a program recovery. And again, I don't speak for AA, but I am an AA. That's the program recovery I'm in. The hardcore AA people get unnerved when I talk about AA, but I'm not going to not talk about this program recovery that changed my life, literally, because it changed the way I think. And in recovery, we have to get to a place where we are useful again. And being useful means we have to get out of ourself, because addiction is a very selfish thing. We have to become selfless again. So every day I have to prime myself to become selfless. And it has this prayer that I learned in prison. I've been praying it every day since. I get up in the morning, I ask God for 2 things. 2 things, and I try not to go back and ask God for anything the rest of the day. I know he's got a lot of stuff on his plate. So I say, hey, God, put in front of me what you need me to do today for you. And let me recognize that when I see that, because I don't want to miss whatever that is. Amen. Now my focus is on serving. It's on being useful again. The same word the lady from parole asked me, she said, define yourself in one word, useful. Now I'm useful again. But it all starts with that prayer, getting my mind right spiritually to go out and conquer whatever is in front of me that day.
That's beautiful, man. I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for being on our show. I've got 1,000 different things I'm going to take away from this.
Awesome.
Super excited about your future and where you're heading. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, my friend, say the word.
Brother, I appreciate it, man.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, brother. Thank you, man.